He came to me before either of us could speak a word. His breathing was unsteady against my neck. Waves of nervous energy hit me suddenly, not fear of me, but shock that I was letting this happen. His grip on my waist was desperate, like he thought I might vanish if he let go. His other hand pressed into the mattress next to my head, shaking under his own weight. He moved slowly at first, then even slower, like he couldn't believe this was real, like he needed me there to keep him steady. I looked up at him, sweat running down his face. My eyes closed tight as I felt him give in completely, his movements becoming uneven, his body going rigid. A shake turned into a full shudder down his back. I thought he'd stop, that he'd pull away, crushed by shame. But I reached up, my fingers touching the back of his neck, and whispered, "It's all right." And he broke apart. He moved deeper, more gently. His arms shook harder. He surrounded me completely, and I stayed there, not wanting to move away. Not once. I wrapped my legs around him, holding onto this moment like it wasn't the biggest mistake of my life. Right then, it didn't feel like one. It felt like something we'd been waiting for forever, full of fear and want. I never thought I'd be here. Not with him. Not with someone I was supposed to protect. Not with someone who used to sit at my kitchen counter after school, eating cereal while asking for help with college applications. I'm 42 and married. 2 sons, one in college, one about to graduate high school. I love to bake. I teach part-time. I serve on the church parent board. I always keep my word. I follow through on everything. But not this time. His name is Ryan. He's 24. My former student, my son's old best friend. I tutored him when he was 17. Awkward, too tall, too quiet. His mom used to joke that he had no clue how to talk to girls. I'd tell her he'd figure himself out eventually. I never could have predicted the man he'd become. I never planned to stay in touch after he graduated, but he'd show up during holidays and backyard parties. Each year he came back taller, more confident, wrapped in this deep quiet. He started helping with things when my husband's work got busier. Quietly fixing parts of home life, changing light bulbs without being asked, carrying weight without making a big deal of it. I told myself it was just gratitude. He'd say things like, "I don't know where I'd be without your help back then." And I'd smile, wave it off, ignore the warmth spreading in my chest, not knowing it was crossing a line. Then one night, I opened the door and he was completely different. Standing there in a fitted black shirt, hands in his jacket pockets, hair wet from the rain. He'd just come back to town, said he missed the food, missed the peace, said he missed me. We sat on the couch, talked about his work, his new place, people he'd grown distant from. He never mentioned my son's name once. When I got up to take his plate, he followed me to the kitchen. When I turned around, he was standing too close. I could have stepped back, I should have. Instead, I looked up and said, "You've changed." He stared at me, breathless. "You haven't." The dish towel fell from my hands. He bent down to pick it up, stopping halfway as he said, "You were my best teacher back then." I don't think you knew how much. I stood completely still. My heart was pounding hard. Just as I was about to answer, he stepped back. "I should go," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." I let him leave. But I couldn't sleep that night either. 2 weeks later, we ran into each other at the store. I'd gone for something simple, just milk. He was hanging around the deli section. He looked at me like the world had changed around us, but he'd stayed the same. He walked me to my car, took my bag, stood in the cold evening air, and asked, "Do you ever think about it?" I said, "Think about what?" He looked down, shook his head slowly, clearly struggling. "Never mind." I said nothing. That night he texted, I know I shouldn't, but I can't stop thinking about you. I didn't answer until the next night, then he stopped coming around. He didn't stop, and neither did I tonight. It happened in my guest room, door closed, lights dim, after my husband left for his work trip, and the boys went to their uncle's for the weekend. He showed up, said he was just driving by. I let him in. We didn't talk much. I took his jacket. He kicked off his shoes. His hands trembled when they found my waist, but he didn't pull away. Not this time. He moved like someone still learning, with hesitation, with wonder, and I realized I was teaching him again. Only now the lesson would destroy everything. What would you do if the person you were meant to protect became the one you secretly wanted? Because I didn't just let him into my world, I kept him there, caught in the moment. If you've ever carried a secret that burned with both desire and pain, this story might hit closer to home than you want to admit. Please like and subscribe. The deeper you go, the more stories like this reveal others hiding the same truth. Let's begin. The next morning, my feet felt like they were floating on the cold kitchen floor. I poured coffee, added too much cream without thinking, and nearly got sick from the first taste. I dumped it out and made a new pot like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just snuck out of my guest room an hour before, shoes in hand, hoodie half-zipped, mumbling something I couldn't hear. Like I hadn't held him until the shaking in his arms finally stopped. Like I hadn't kissed the top of his head when he leaned into me, whispering, "I never meant to want this." While I cleaned the counter, my husband called asking for a photo of a tax document. He sounded calm. His voice had that familiar softness it always had when his mind was somewhere else. Photo sent. Thanks. I hung up, leaning against the fridge as the cold metal pressed through my shirt. A sharp reminder of the tension still hanging in the air. I never meant to feel this way. Mason had walked through our door so many times, each visit creating a web of unspoken feelings and hidden truths. He and my son practically grew up together, sharing our home for years. Backyard birthday parties, heated video game battles, nights falling asleep on the couch in an old blanket with an empty cereal box next to him. I used to help him with math, writing, and college essays. Now I was remembering how his mouth felt on my collarbone, how he shook when he moved into me like he thought I'd make him stop, how I didn't. I thought distance would fix it, that I'd feel disgusted in daylight, that the weight of what I'd done would crush the memory, but it didn't. It made it stronger because I didn't feel shame. I felt hunger. Mason didn't text the next day or the one after. He didn't need to. I knew his silence for what it was. Guilt eating through his spine the way it was eating through mine. I folded laundry. I prepped meals. I stayed busy. But every time I walked past the guest room, I remembered how he said my name, quiet like it hurt to say it out loud. By the third day I broke. I sent one message. "Are you okay?" His answer came instantly. I keep replaying it. I don't know what I was thinking. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. Then I typed, "You weren't the only one." He went quiet after that. That night, I sat in the bathroom shadows, the clock past midnight. My back against the cold bathtub, lost in thought, wondering about the last time I let someone get close without guilt eating me alive. For almost 3 years, my husband and I had been drifting. Our connection a fading memory, not in any dramatic way, not in a way that recognized my humanity. Everything looked fine. That's what I kept telling people. We functioned perfectly. We showed up. But when Ryan's hand touched mine, careful and reverent, I felt truly seen for the first time in longer than I could remember in my decade-long marriage. It was something deeper than just physical. It was quieter, sadder, something I couldn't put into words. I first met Mason when he was 17. He was shy, thin, his eyes always moving around the room like he was always catching up to a conversation he'd missed. His mother had begged me to help him pass senior English. We'd meet at the dining table twice a week where I taught him to put his thoughts into words, to face them head-on instead of dancing around the truth. He listened so carefully. He never forgot what I taught him, not even the small things. And maybe that's when it started. Not a feeling, not attraction, just awareness. That rare, haunting realization that someone sees you without knowing what they're looking at. He grew up, graduated, found his voice. But he still looked at me with that same focus, like I was still the only person who ever saw his potential. Even after he left for college, he'd still visit during breaks, bringing treats and quietly fixing things without being asked, always taking that same chair. He always asked about my day before I could ask about his. It was this recent visit, now that he'd grown up, gotten stable, built a career, that the shift became obvious. He asked if he could stay a few days before moving into his new place. Said he needed time to finalize his lease. My husband didn't think twice, agreed immediately. Why wouldn't he? He stayed in the guest room, helped with dinner, laughed with my son, was polite, careful, and then one night, he lingered on the back porch, reading a book as darkness fell around him. I brought him tea. Sat next to him. I'm not sure why I asked. What do you remember about those tutoring sessions? He looked over, surprised, thought for a moment. You never made me feel stupid, he said. That caught me off guard. I smiled a little. You were never stupid, you just needed space to breathe. He took the mug from my hands. A tension hanging in the air between us. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Did you know how I felt back then? My stomach dropped. No, I said firmly, then softer, maybe a little. He looked down. I used to dream about being this close to you and not having to pretend it didn't matter. The silence was complete. I never said stop. I didn't move. He was the one who kissed me and I let it happen. After that night on the porch, after we kissed, I couldn't sleep. I waited, expecting the shame to hit me like a wave. It just didn't. It felt different than I expected. The strangest part was how easy it was to slip back into acting normal, morning coffee, folded clothes. My son came back from his weekend trip. My husband asked what was for dinner. Mason stayed in the house like nothing had changed. He kept his distance, barely looked at me, but something had shifted inside me. All those unspoken words hung heavy in the air, tight like a wire stretched between two poles, ready to snap. I wondered if he'd stay away from me. Part of me hoped he would, but then I found him in the laundry room, carefully folding one of my son's shirts. He looked up and went completely still. I didn't mean for this to happen, he said. On the porch. I know, but I don't regret it. My hand stayed on the dryer door. A moment hanging in the air, heavy with secrets. I couldn't look at his face. That doesn't make it right. I'm not looking for right. He stepped back just as I was about to say something else. Left the room. Left me there holding a damp sock and a throat on fire. The next few days passed in careful quiet. We'd pass each other in hallways, make small talk at dinner. My husband stayed oblivious as I kept playing my part perfectly, still smiling when he made sure his travel mug was full before heading out each morning. But I was falling apart, and Mason could see it. One afternoon, I found a note tucked under the coffee maker, just a crumpled piece of paper folded once. Do you remember what you said when I couldn't write my college essay? I unfolded it completely. The handwriting was unmistakable. You said, just tell the truth, even if it hurts. I'm trying to do that, even now. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. He knew the memory was there. That night, my husband went to bed before 10. I stayed up, pretending to check emails. I heard the quiet, deliberate footsteps from the hallway. Mason appeared in the kitchen doorway, barefoot on the cold floor, arms crossed. He stayed at a distance. "I'm leaving in a few days," he said. I nodded. "That's probably smart." He didn't move. "You still haven't answered my question." "What question?" "What it meant to you, that night, the kiss." I closed my laptop. "Do we really need to talk about this?" "No, but I think you want to." I looked at him then, really looked at the way he was holding his breath. His fingers flexed against his arms, like they didn't know where to go. I wish I could say it meant nothing, but that would be the cruelest lie. He took a step forward. "I've never wanted something so badly while hating myself for wanting it." I nodded. "Welcome to being an adult." He laughed, but it sounded pained. "I've had feelings before, but never like this. It's not something that keeps me up at night." My voice came out rough. "Try being the one with everything to lose." He stared at me. "So why didn't you stop it?" "I don't know." I shook my head. "I really don't." Silence filled the room. We stood maybe 6 feet apart. But it felt like a whole world between us. He started to leave, then stopped. "Sometimes I hear your voice in my head," he said. "From years ago, when you'd say things like 'take your time' or 'find your center.' You probably don't remember saying them, but I remember them all." I gripped the table edge. "That voice still gets me through some days," he said. Then he turned and walked away, leaving those words hanging in the air. The next day, we almost broke again. The rain was coming down hard. The power went out. I lit candles, their soft glow filling the living room with warm, flickering light. My son was out. My husband was working late. Mason came out of the guest room with his phone while I curled up under a blanket. "No signal," he said. "It's completely dead out there." He sat on the far end of the couch. Silence wrapped around us. Thunder rolled in the distance. I shifted to speak and my foot brushed his leg. He didn't move. I let my knee stay there, just touching his. He turned slowly, eyes meeting mine. "I didn't come here for this," he said quietly. "I never meant to want it." I should have said the same thing, should have laughed it off, but I just looked at him. Steady, honest. He leaned forward, stopping just short of crossing the line. "Tell me to leave." "I can't," I whispered. He didn't kiss me. Not then. He just nodded, pressed his forehead to mine for a second. Then he got up, left the room. No words. As I sat there in the candlelight, something pulled tight inside me, breath held, every nerve electric with wanting. We almost broke again. We were so close to giving in. But that moment, that almost, hurt more than any kiss could have. Because now we both knew it was more than just a mistake. It was going to happen again. It happened 2 nights later. Again, I was folding towels. The usual routine, the dryer humming quietly. The guest room door was cracked open, letting hallway light spill across the floor. I should have turned around. I should have gone to bed, but I didn't. I walked by, then stopped, then knocked softly. Mason opened the door wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants. His hair was still damp from a shower. In that moment, he looked almost young, vulnerable, like he'd been losing sleep too. "I can't keep dancing around this," I said. "It's messing with my head." His eyes searched mine. "Then stop dancing around it." I stepped inside. He held back, hands still at his sides, at least for now. He waited. I was the one who closed the space between us. I touched his face. His cheek was warm, stubble rough against my palm. He closed his eyes and came completely undone. I shouldn't be here, I said. I know. I'm not going anywhere. I know. And then we moved, breaths careful and caught in our throats like we were learning this forbidden dance, shame following every touch. He kissed me like he was afraid of doing it wrong. I kissed him like that moment could heal the years of distance I'd let build between us. When we took off our clothes, it wasn't frantic. It was something else. It was a different kind of weight, heavier. It felt like we were peeling away more than just fabric, like we were unwrapping years of unspoken longing and careful restraint that had built up between us. His body shook as he moved over me, not from nerves, but from emotion, from the weight of it, from all the nights we'd both held back. His rhythm started careful, unsteady. With every breath, I felt him adjusting, every shift of his hips showing how desperately he wanted this while trying to hide just how much he needed it. I guided him without words, my hands on his arms, our breathing sinking. When he went deeper, he trembled all over. "Sorry," he whispered, face pressed to my shoulder. "Don't be," I said softly. "Not tonight." He kissed me then. Once then again, his hands gripping my hips like he was afraid I'd disappear. But I didn't. I let him sink deeper, helped him find a new rhythm, one that was slower, more deliberate. The room filled with whispers, the heat of our bodies, the quiet creak of the bed under us. Silence that felt like acceptance. He held me like I was the only thing keeping him together, and I held him back because I needed that connection just as much. When it was over, he stayed there. He stayed inside me, our chests pressed together, breathing uneven and full of tension. "I don't want this to ruin you," he said quietly. I ran my fingers through his hair. "It already has," I said, "but not the way you think." He looked up, eyes glassy and red. "I used to imagine this," he said. "But not like this, not with guilt, just us being enough for each other." "You shouldn't be," I said. "But I am," he said. "Just for tonight." And that's what it was. Not a confession or a promise, just this moment. He pulled the blanket over us. I stayed, not because I didn't know better, but because for the first time in forever, I felt wanted, really wanted, not out of habit, not out of duty, but from the heat of someone who'd been waiting too long. I watched him sleep, one arm across his chest, eyebrows furrowed like he was having a troubled dream. I memorized his face, the way his lips curved, the whisper of his breath on my skin, knowing this was temporary and would never happen again. It had already cost too much. But I knew I'd remember it forever. Not the way he shook the first time he came into me, not the way I guided him again to find his rhythm. Not the way his body went still when I whispered, "It's okay." It wasn't okay, it was far from okay, but it was ours. In that moment, that's all that mattered. The morning after, I found myself at the sink, washing plates that hadn't held any food. I'd slept maybe 2 hours, gotten up before dawn, desperate not to see him first thing. The house was eerily quiet. My son stayed upstairs, didn't come down. My husband had left for another long work trip. It should have felt normal. It didn't. I caught my reflection in the window above the sink and barely recognized myself. Not that I looked different, something inside had changed, something that felt permanent. Mason came downstairs later than usual. His hair was messy, chaotic from the night before. His sweatshirt was wrinkled. He stood in the doorway, uncertain, like he wasn't sure he had the right to be there. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't not look at him. He cleared his throat. "I can make breakfast." I shook my head. "No, you need to leave." His silence hung behind me heavy, like asking, "Is this really what you want?" I turned slowly. His eyes were red-rimmed. His jaw was tight. "I don't know what I want," I said, "but I know what we did lives in shadows." He stepped closer. You think I'm proud of this, I'm not. But I don't regret it either. I've wanted to be close to you for years, and now I can't pretend anymore. What am I supposed to do with that? I lost it. Keep sneaking around whenever the house is empty. Live with this guilt and pretend it's just part of life. No, he looked down. But I can't pretend you haven't changed me. That hit deeper than it should have. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out the folded note I'd left on his pillow that night. Just one line. I should have never let this happen, but I don't regret it. He opened it like it held some sacred truth. I can see you're trying to be strong, he said, but we're past that now. He turned and walked away. Quiet, no anger, no drama, just gone. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I stood there with the faucet still running, hands shaking, breath trapped in my chest. Later that week, we saw each other again. Coming out of the grocery store, I spotted him parked across the street, eyes meeting through the glass, silent connections sparking between us. He just sat there, hands still. I didn't wave, but we stared too long. At home, I went through the motions. I cooked dinner, I washed clothes, I sent emails, but everything felt off. My husband asked if I was feeling sick. My younger son looked at me like he was trying to figure out what was different about me. I snapped at the dog for no reason. At night, I'd lie awake, replaying every moment of what happened. It's not just the physical part. The way his voice broke when he said my name.